Story 2 of The Bet and Other Stories by Anton Chekhov. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Story 2, A Tedious Story from an Old Man's Journal, Part 2. After the lecture I sit at home and work. I read reviews, dissertations, or prepare for the next lecture, and sometimes I write something. I work with interruptions, since I have to receive visitors. The bell rings. It is a friend who has come to talk over some business. He enters with hat and stick. He holds them both in front of him and says, "Just a minute. Sit down, cher confrère, only a word or two." First we try to show each other that we are both extraordinarily polite and very glad to see each other. I make him sit down in the chair, and he makes me sit down, and then we touch each other's waists and put our hands on each other's buttons, as though we were feeling each other and afraid to bum ourselves. We both laugh, though we say nothing funny. Sitting down, we bend our heads together and begin to whisper to each other. We must gild our conversation with such Chinese formalities as, "You remarked most justly," or, "I have already had the occasion to say." We must giggle if either of us makes a pun, though it's a bad one. When we have finished with the business, my friend gets up with a rush, waves his hat towards my work, and begins to take his leave. We feel each other once more and laugh. I accompany him down to the hall. There I help my friend on with his coat, but he emphatically declines so great an honour. Then, when Jaeger opens the door, my friend assures me that I will catch cold, and I pretend to be ready to follow him into the street. And when I finally return to my study, my face keeps smiling still, it must be from inertia. A little later another ring. Some one enters the hall, spends a long time taking off his coat, and coughs. Jaeger brings me word that a student has come. I tell him to show him up. In a minute a pleasant-faced young man appears. For a year we have been on these forced terms together. He sends in abominable answers at examinations, and I mark him Gamma. Every year I have about 7 of these people to whom, to use the student slang, I give a plough, or haul them through. Those of them who fail because of stupidity or illness usually bear their cross in patience and do not bargain with me. Only sanguine temperaments, open natures, bargain with me and come to my house, people whose appetite is spoiled or who are prevented from going regularly to the opera by a delay in their examinations. With the first I am overindulgent. The second kind I keep on the run for a year. "Sit down," I say to my guest. "What was it you wished to say?" "Forgive me for troubling you, Professor," he begins, stammering and never looking me in the face. "I would not venture to trouble you unless I was up for my examination before you for the 5th time, and I failed. I implore you to be kind and give me a satis, because—" The defence which all idlers make of themselves is always the same. They have passed in every other subject with distinction, and failed only in mine, which is all the more strange because they had always studied my subject most diligently and know it thoroughly. They failed through some inconceivable misunderstanding. "Forgive me, my friend," I say to my guest, "but I can't give you a satis. Impossible. Go and read your lectures again, and then come, and then we'll see." Pause. I get a desire to torment the student a little, because he prefers beer and the opera to science, and I say with a sigh, "In my opinion, the best thing for you now is to give up the faculty of medicine altogether. With your abilities, if you find it impossible to pass the examination, then it seems you have neither the desire nor the vocation to be a doctor." My sanguine friend's face grows grave. "Excuse me, Professor," he smiles, "but it would be strange, to say the least, on my part. Studying medicine for 5 years and suddenly to throw it over." "Yes, but it's better to waste 5 years than to spend your whole life afterwards in an occupation which you dislike." Immediately I began to feel sorry for him, and hastened to say, "Well, do as you please. Read a little and come again." "When?" the idler asked dully. "Whenever you like. To-morrow even." And I read in his pleasant eyes, "I can come again, but you'll send me away again, you beast." "Of course," I say, "you won't become more learned because you have to come up to me 15 times for examination, but this will form your character. You must be thankful for that." Silence. I rise and wait for my guest to leave, but he stands there, looking at the window, pulling at his little beard and thinking. It becomes tedious. My sanguine friend has a pleasant, succulent voice, clever, amusing eyes, a good-natured face, rather puffed by assiduity to beer, and much resting on the sofa. Evidently he could tell me many interesting things about the opera, about his love affairs, about the friends he adores, but unfortunately it is not the thing. And I would so eagerly listen. "On my word of honour, Professor, if you give me a satis, I'll..." As soon as it gets to "my word of honour," I wave my hands and sit down to the table. The student thinks for a while and says dejectedly: "In that case, good bye. Forgive me." "Good bye, my friend. Good bye." He walks irresolutely into the hall, slowly puts on his coat, and when he goes into the street, probably thinks again for a long while. Having excogitated nothing better than "old devil" for me, he goes to a cheap restaurant to drink beer and dine, and then home to sleep. Peace be to your ashes, honest labourer. A third ring. Enters a young doctor in a new black suit, gold-rimmed spectacles, and the inevitable white necktie. He introduces himself. I ask him to take a seat and inquire his business. The young priest of science begins to tell me, not without agitation, that he passed his doctor's examination this year, and now has only to write his dissertation. He would like to work with me under my guidance, and I would do him a great kindness if I would suggest a subject for his dissertation. "I would be delighted to be of use to you, mon cher confrère," I say, "but first of all let us come to an agreement as to what is a dissertation. Generally we understand by this work produced as the result of an independent creative power. Isn't that so? But a work written on another's subject, under another's guidance, has a different name." The aspirant is silent. I fire up and jump out of my seat. "Why do you all come to me? I can't understand," I cry out angrily. "Do I keep a shop? I don't sell these across the counter. For the 1000th time I ask you all to leave me alone. Forgive my rudeness, but I've got tired of it at last." The aspirant is silent. Only a tinge of colour shows in his cheek. His face expresses his profound respect for my famous name and my erudition, but I see in his eyes that he despises my voice, my pitiable figure, my nervous gestures. When I am angry I seem to him a very queer fellow. "I do not keep a shop," I storm. "It's an amazing business. Why don't you want to be independent? Why do you find freedom so objectionable?" I say a great deal, but he is silent. At last, by degrees, I grow calm, and, of course, surrender. The aspirant will receive a valueless subject from me, will write under my observation a needless thesis, will pass his tedious disputation cum laude, and will get a useless and learned degree. The rings follow in endless succession, but here I confine myself to 4. The 4th ring sounds, and I hear the familiar steps, the rustling dress, the dear voice. 18 years ago my dear friend, the oculist, died, and left behind him a 7-year-old daughter, Katy, and 60,000 roubles. By his will he made me guardian. Katy lived in my family till she was 10. Afterwards she was sent to college, and lived with me only in her holidays in the summer months. I had no time to attend to her education. I watched only by fits and starts, so that I can say very little about her childhood. The chief thing I remember, the one I love to dwell upon in memory, is the extraordinary confidence which she had when she entered my house, when she had to have the doctor, a confidence which was always shining in her darling face. She would sit in a corner somewhere with her face tied up, and would be sure to be absorbed in watching something. Whether she was watching me write and read books, or my wife bustling about, or the cook peeling the potatoes in the kitchen, or the dog playing about, Her eyes invariably expressed the same thing. "Everything that goes on in this world, everything is beautiful and clever." She was inquisitive and adored to talk to me. She would sit at the table opposite me, watching my movements and asking questions. She is interested to know what I read, what I do at the university, if I'm not afraid of corpses, what I do with my money. "Do the students fight at the university?" she would ask. "They do, my dear." "You make them go down on their knees?" "I do." And it seemed funny to her that the students fought and that I made them go down on their knees, and she laughed. She was a gentle, good, patient child. Pretty often I happened to see how something was taken away from her, or she was unjustly punished, or her curiosity was not satisfied. At such moments sadness would be added to her permanent expression of confidence, nothing more. I didn't know how to take her part, but when I saw her sadness, I always had the desire to draw her close to me and comfort her in an old nurse's voice, "My darling little orphan." I remember, too, she loved to be well dressed and to sprinkle herself with scents. In this she was like me. I also love good clothes and fine scents. I regret that I had neither the time nor the inclination to watch the beginnings and the growth of the passion which had completely taken hold of Katy when she was no more than 14 or 15. I mean her passionate love for the theatre. When she used to come from the college for her holidays and live with us, nothing gave her such pleasure and enthusiasm to talk about as plays and actors. She used to tire us with her incessant conversation about the theatre. I alone hadn't the courage to deny her my attention. My wife and children did not listen to her. When she felt the desire to share her raptures, she would come to my study and coax, "Nicolai Stiepanich, do let me speak to you about the theatre." I used to show her the time and say, "I'll give you half an hour. Fire away." Later on she used to bring in pictures of the actors and actresses she worshipped, whole dozens of them. Then several times she tried to take part in amateur theatricals, and finally when she left college she declared to me she was born to be an actress. I never shared Katy's enthusiasms for the theatre. My opinion is that if a play is good, then there's no need to trouble the actors for it to make the proper impression. You can be satisfied merely by reading it. If the play is bad, no acting will make it good. When I was young I often went to the theatre, and nowadays my family takes a box twice a year and carries me off for an airing there. Of course, this is not enough to give me the right to pass verdicts on the theatre, but I will say a few words about it. In my opinion, the theatre hasn't improved in the last 30 or 40 years. I can't find any more than I did then a glass of clean water either in the corridors or the foyer. Just as they did then, the attendants fine me 6d. for my coat, though there's nothing illegal in wearing a warm coat in winter. Just as it did then, the orchestra plays quite unnecessarily in the intervals, and adds a new, gratuitous impression to the one received from the play. Just as they did then, men go to the bar in the intervals and drink spirits. If there is no perceptible improvement in little things, it will be useless to look for it in the bigger things. When an actor, hide-bound in theatrical traditions and prejudices, tries to read simple straightforward monologue, to be or not to be, not at all simply, but with an incomprehensible and inevitable hiss and convulsions over his whole body, or when he tries to convince me that Chatsky, who is always talking to fools and is in love with a fool, is a very clever man, and that The Sorrows of Knowledge is not a boring play, then I get from the stage a breath of the same old routine that exasperated me 40 years ago, when I was regaled with classical lamentation and beating on the breast. Every time I come out of the theatre a more thorough conservative than I went in. It's quite possible to convince the sentimental, self-confident crowd that the theatre in its present state is an education; but not a man who knows what true education is would swallow this. I don't know what it may be in 50 or 100 years, but under present conditions the theatre can only be a recreation. But the recreation is too expensive for continual use, and robs the country of thousands of young, healthy, gifted men and women, who, if they had not devoted themselves to the theatre, would be excellent doctors, farmers, schoolmistresses, or officers. It robs the public of its evenings, the best time for intellectual work and friendly conversation. I pass over the waste of money and the moral injuries to the spectator when he sees murder, adultery, or slander wrongly treated on the stage. But Katie's opinion was quite the opposite. She assured me that even in its present state the theatre is above lecture rooms and books, above everything else in the world. The theatre is a power that unites in itself all the arts, and the actors are men with a mission. No separate art or science can act on the human soul so strongly and truly as the stage, and therefore it is reasonable that a medium actor should enjoy much greater popularity than the finest scholar or painter. No public activity can give such delight and satisfaction as the theatrical. So one fine day Katie joined a theatrical company and went away, I believe to Ufa, taking with her a lot of money, a bagful of rainbow hopes, and some very high-class views on the business. Her first letters on the journey were wonderful. When I read them I was simply amazed that little sheets of paper could contain so much youth, such transparent purity, such divine innocence, and at the same time so many subtle, sensible judgments that would do honour to a sound masculine intelligence. The Volga, nature, the town she visited, her friends, her successes and failures. She did not write about them, she sang. Every line breathed the confidence which I used to see in her face, and with all this a mass of grammatical mistakes and hardly a single stop. Scarcely 6 months passed before I received a highly poetical, enthusiastic letter beginning, "I have fallen in love." She enclosed a photograph of a young man with a clean-shaven face in a broad-brimmed hat, with a plaid thrown over his shoulders. The next letters were just as splendid, but stops already began to appear, and the grammatical mistakes to vanish. They had a strong masculine scent. Katie began to write about what a good thing it would be to build a big theatre somewhere in the Volga, but on a cooperative basis, and to attract the rich business men and ship owners to the undertaking. There would be plenty of money, huge receipts, and the actors would work in partnership. Perhaps all this is really a good thing, but I can't help thinking such schemes could only come from a man's head. Anyhow, for 18 months or a couple of years, everything seemed to be all right. Katie was in love, had her heart in her business, and was happy. But later on I began to notice dear symptoms of a decline in her letters. It began with Katie complaining about her friends. This is the first and most ominous sign. If a young scholar or litterateur begins his career by complaining bitterly about other scholars or littérateurs, it means that he is tired already and not fit for his business. Katie wrote to me that her friends would not come to rehearsals and never knew their parts, that they showed an utter contempt for the public in the absurd plays they staged and the manner they behaved. To swell the box-office receipts, the only topic of conversation, serious actresses degrade themselves by singing sentimentalities, and tragic actors sing music-hall songs, laughing at husbands who are deceived and unfaithful wives who are pregnant. In short, it was amazing that the profession in the provinces was not absolutely dead. The marvel was that it could exist at all with such thin, rotten blood in its veins. In reply I sent Katie a long and, I confess, a very tedious letter. Among other things I wrote, "I used to talk fairly often to actors in the past, men of the noblest character who honoured me with their friendship. From my conversations with them I understood that their activities were guided rather by the whim and fashion of society than by the free working of their own minds. The best of them in their lifetime had to play in tragedy, in musical comedy, in French farce, and in pantomime, yet all through they considered that they were treading the right path and being useful. You see that this means that you must look for the cause of the evil, not in the actors, but deeper down, in the art itself, and the attitude of society towards it. This letter of mine only made Katy cross. You and I are playing in different operas. I didn't write to you about men of the noblest character, but about a lot of sharks who haven't a spark of nobility in them. They are a horde of savages who come on the stage only because they wouldn't be allowed anywhere else. The only ground they have for calling themselves artists is their impudence. Not a single talent among them, but any number of incapables, drunkards, intriguers, and slanderers. I can't tell you how bitterly I feel it that the art I love so much is fallen into the hands of people I despise. It hurts me that the best men should be content to look at evil from a distance and not want to come nearer. Instead of taking an active part, they write ponderous platitudes and useless sermons, and more in the same strain. A little while after, I receive the following: I have been inhumanly deceived. I can't go on living any more. Do as you think fit with my money. I loved you as a father and as my only friend. Forgive me. So it appeared that he, too, belonged to the horde of savages. Later on I gathered from various hints that there was an attempt at suicide. Apparently Katy tried to poison herself. I think she must have been seriously ill afterwards, for I got the following letter from Yalta, where most probably the doctors had sent her. Her last letter to me contained a request that I should send her at Yalta 1,000 roubles, and it ended with the words, "Forgive me for writing such a sad letter. I buried my baby yesterday." After she had spent about a year in the Crimea, she returned home. She had been travelling for about 4 years, and during these 4 years I confess that I occupied a strange and unenviable position in regard to her. When she announced to me that she was going on to the stage, and afterwards wrote to me about her love, when the desire to spend took hold of her, as it did periodically, and I had to send her every now and then 1,000 or 2,000 roubles at her request, when she wrote that she intended to die, and afterwards that her baby was dead, I was at a loss every time. All my sympathy with her fate consisted in thinking hard and writing long tedious letters, which might as well never have been written. But then I was in loco parentis, and I loved her as a daughter. Katy lives half a mile away from me now. She took a 5-roomed house and furnished it comfortably with the taste that was born in her. If any one were to undertake to depict her surroundings, then the dominating mood of the picture would be indolence: soft cushions, soft chairs for her indolent body, carpets for her indolent feet, faded, dim, dull colors for her indolent eyes, for her indolent soul a heap of cheap fans and tiny pictures on the walls, pictures in which novelty of execution was more noticeable than content, plenty of little tables and stands, set out with perfectly useless and worthless things, shapeless scraps instead of curtains. All this, combined with a horror of bright colors, of symmetry and space, betokened a perversion of the natural taste as well as indolence of the soul. For whole days Katy lies on the sofa and reads books, mostly novels and stories. She goes outside her house but once in the day to come and see me. I work. Katy sits on the sofa at my side. She is silent, and wraps herself up in her shawl as though she were cold. Either because she is sympathetic to me, or I because I had got used to her continual visits while she was still a little girl, her presence does not prevent me from concentrating on my work. At long intervals I ask her some question or other, mechanically, and she answers very curtly, or for a moment's rest I turn towards her and watch how she is absorbed in looking through some medical review or newspaper, and then I see that the old expression of confidence in her face is there no more. Her expression now is cold, indifferent, distracted, like that of a passenger who has to wait a long while for his train. She dresses as she used, well and simply, but carelessly. Evidently her clothes and her hair suffer not a little from the sofas and hammocks on which she lies for days together. And she is not curious any more. She doesn't ask me questions any more, as if she had experienced everything in life and did not expect to hear anything new. About 4 o'clock there is a sound of movement in the hall and the drawing room. It's Liza come back from the Conservatoire, bringing her friends with her. You can hear them playing the piano, trying their voices, and giggling. Yegor is laying the table in the dining room and making a noise with the plates. "Good-bye," says Katy. "I shan't go in to see your people. They must excuse me. I haven't time. Come and see me." When I escort her into the hall, she looks me over sternly from head to foot, and says in vexation: "You get thinner and thinner. Why don't you take a cure? I'll go to Sergius Fiodorovich and ask him to come. You must let him see you." "It is not necessary, Katy." "I don't understand why your family does nothing. They're a nice lot." She puts on her jacket with her rush. Inevitably 2 or 3 hairpins fall out of her careless hair onto the floor. It's too much bother to tidy her hair now, besides she is in a hurry. She pushes the straggling strands of hair untidily under her hat and goes away. As soon as I come into the dining room, my wife asks: "Was that Katy with you just now? Why didn't she come to see us? It really is extraordinary." "Mamma," says Liza reproachfully, "if she doesn't want to come, that's her affair. There's no need for us to go on our knees." "Very well, but it's insulting to sit in the study for 3 hours without thinking of us. But she can do as she likes." Vanya and Liza both hate Katy. This hatred is unintelligible to me. Probably you have to be a woman to understand it. I'll bet my life on it that you'll hardly find a single one among the 150 young men I see almost every day in my audience, or the 100 old ones I happen to meet every week, who would be able to understand why women hate and abhor Katy's past, her being pregnant and unmarried, and her illegitimate child. Yet at the same time I cannot bring to mind a single woman or girl of my acquaintance who would not cherish such feelings, either consciously or instinctively. And it's not because women are purer or more virtuous than men. If virtue and purity are not free from evil feeling, there's precious little difference between them and vice. I explain it simply by the backward state of women's development. The sorrowful sense of compassion and the torment of conscience which the modern man experiences when he sees distress have much more to tell me about culture and moral development than have hatred and repulsion. The modern woman is as lachrymose and as coarse in heart as she was in the Middle Ages, and in my opinion those who advise her to be educated like a man have wisdom on their side. But still my wife does not like Katy, because she was an actress, and for her ingratitude, her pride, her extravagances, and all the innumerable vices one woman can always discover in another. Besides myself and my family, we have 2 or 3 of my daughter's girl friends to dinner, and Alexander Adolphovich Gnekker, Liza's admirer and suitor. He is a fair young man, not more than 30 years old, of middle height, very fat, broad-shouldered, with reddish hair round his ears, and a little stained moustache, which give his smooth, chubby face the look of a doll's. He wears a very short jacket, a fancy waistcoat, large striped trousers, very full at the hip and very narrow in the leg, and brown boots without heels. His eyes stick out like a lobster's, his tie is like a lobster's tail, and I can't help thinking even that the smell of lobster soup clings about the whole of this young man. He visits us every day, but no one in the family knows where he comes from, where he was educated, or how he lives. He cannot play or sing, but he has a certain connection with music as well as singing, for he is agent for somebody's pianos, and is often at the Academy. He knows all the celebrities, and he manages concerts. He gives his opinion on music with great authority, and I have noticed that everybody hastens to agree with him. Rich men always have parasites about them. So do the sciences and the arts. It seems that there is no science or art in existence which is free from such foreign bodies as this Mr. Necker. I am not a musician, and perhaps I am mistaken about Necker. Besides, I don't know him very well. But I can't help suspecting the authority and dignity with which he stands beside the piano and listens when any one is singing or playing. You may be a gentleman and a privy councillor 100 times over, but if you have a daughter you can't be guaranteed against the pettiness that are so often brought into your house and into your own humour by courtings, engagements, and weddings. For instance, I cannot reconcile myself to my wife's solemn expression every time Necker comes to our house, nor to those bottles of Chateau Lafite, port, and sherry, which are put on the table only for him, to convince him beyond doubt of the generous luxury in which we live. Nor can I stomach the staccato laughter which Liza learned at the Academy, and her way of screwing up her eyes when men are about the house. Above all, I can't understand why it is that such a creature should come to me every day and have dinner with me, a creature perfectly foreign to my habits, my science, and the whole tenor of my life, a creature absolutely unlike the men I love. My wife and the servants whisper mysteriously that is the bridegroom, but still I can't understand why he's there. It disturbs my mind just as much as if a Zulu were put next to me at table. Besides, it seems strange to me that my daughter, whom I used to think of as a baby, should be in love with that necktie, those eyes, those chubby cheeks. Formerly I either enjoyed my dinner or was indifferent about it. Now it does nothing but bore and exasperate me. Since I was made an Excellency and Dean of the Faculty, for some reason or other my family found it necessary to make a thorough change in our menu and the dinner arrangements. Instead of the simple food I was used to as a student and a doctor, I am now fed on potage puree, with some suzuki swimming about in it, and kidneys in Madeira. The title of General and my renown have robbed me forever of schi and savoury pies, and roast goose with apple sauce and bream with kasha. They robbed me as well of my maidservant Agasha, a funny, talkative old woman, instead of whom I am now waited on by Yegor, a stupid, conceited fellow, who always has a white glove in his right hand. The intervals between the courses are short, but they seem terribly long. There is nothing to fill them. We don't have any more of the old good humour, the familiar conversations, the jokes and the laughter; no more mutual endearments, or the gaiety that used to animate my children, my wife, and myself when we met at the dinner table. For a busy man like me, dinner was a time to rest and meet my friends, and a feast for my wife and children, not a very long feast, to be sure, but a gay and happy one, for they knew that for half an hour I did not belong to science and my students, but solely to them and to no one else. No more chance of getting tipsy on a single glass of wine, no more Agasha, no more bream with kasha, no more the old uproar to welcome our little contretemps at dinner, when the cat fought the dog under the table, or Katie's headband fell down her cheek into her soup. Our dinner nowadays is as nasty to describe as to eat. On my wife's face there is pompousness, an assumed gravity, and the usual anxiety. She eyes our plates nervously. "I see you don't like the meat. Honestly, don't you like it?" And I must answer, "Don't worry, my dear, the meat is very good." She: "You're always taking my part, Nicolai Stiepanich. You never tell the truth. Why has Alexander Adolphovich eaten so little?" And the same sort of conversation for the whole of dinner. Liza laughs staccato and screws up her eyes. I look at both of them, and at this moment at dinner here I can see quite clearly that their inner lives have slipped out of my observation long ago. I feel as though once upon a time I lived at home with a real family, but now I am dining as a guest with an unreal wife and looking at an unreal Liza. There has been an utter change in both of them, while I have lost sight of the long process that led up to the change. No wonder I don't understand anything. What was the reason of the change? I don't know. Perhaps the only trouble is that God did not give my wife and daughter the strength He gave me. From my childhood I have been accustomed to resist outside influences, and have been hardened enough. Such earthly catastrophes as fame being made general, the change from comfort to living above my means, acquaintance with high society, have scarcely touched me. I have survived safe and sound, but it all fell down like an avalanche on my weak, unhardened wife and Liza, and crushed them. Necker and the girls talk of fugues and counterfugues, singers and pianists, Bach and Brahms, and my wife, frightened of being suspected of musical ignorance, smiles sympathetically and murmurs, "Oh, wonderful! Oh, is it possible? Why?" Necker eats steadily, jokes gravely, and listens condescendingly to the ladies' remarks. Now and then he has the desire to talk bad French, and then he finds it necessary, for some unknown reason, to address me magnificently, "Votre Excellence." And I am morose. Apparently I embarrass them all, and they embarrass me. I never had any intimate acquaintance with class antagonism before, but now something of the kind torments me indeed. I try to find only bad traits in Necker. It does not take long, and then I am tormented because one of my friends has not taken his place as bridegroom. In another way, too, his presence has a bad effect upon me. Usually, when I am left alone with myself, or when I am in the company of people I love, I never think of my merits, and if I begin to think about them, they seem as trivial as though I had become a scholar only yesterday. But in the presence of a man like Necker, my merits appear to me like an extremely high mountain, whose summit is lost in the clouds, while Necker's move about the foot so small as hardly to be seen. After dinner I go up to my study and light my little pipe, the only one during the whole day, the sole survivor of my old habit of smoking from morning to night. My wife comes in to me while I am smoking, and sits down to speak to me. Just as in the morning, I know beforehand what the conversation will be. "We ought to talk seriously, Nicolai Stiepanovich," she begins. "I mean about Liza. Why don't you attend?" "Attend to what?" "You pretend you don't notice anything. It's not right. It's not right to be unconcerned. Necker has intentions about Liza. What do you say to that?" "I can't say he's a bad man, because I don't know him, but I've told you 1,000 times already that I don't like him." "But that's impossible. Impossible!" She rises and walks about in agitation. "It's impossible to have such an attitude to a serious matter," she says. "When our daughter's happiness is concerned, we must put everything personal aside. I know you don't like him. Very well. But if we refuse him now and upset everything, how can you guarantee that Liza won't have a grievance against us for the rest of her life? Heaven knows there aren't many young men nowadays. It's quite likely there won't be another chance. He loves Liza very much, and she likes him, evidently. Of course, he hasn't a settled position. But what is there to do? Please God, he'll get a position in time. He comes of a good family, and he's rich." "How did you find that out?" "He said so himself. His father has a big house in Kharkov, and an estate outside. You must certainly go to Kharkov." "Why?" "You'll find out there. You have acquaintances among the professors there. I'd go myself, but I'm a woman. I can't." "I will not go to Kharkov," I say morosely. My wife gets frightened. A tormented expression comes over her face. "For God's sake, Nicolai Stiepanovich," she implores, sobbing, "for God's sake, help me with this burden. It hurts me." It is painful to look at her. "Very well, Varya," I say kindly. "If you like. Very well, I'll go to Kharkov and do everything you want." She puts her handkerchief to her eyes and goes to cry in her room. I am left alone. A little later they bring in the lamp. The familiar shadows that have wearied me for years fall from the chairs and the lamp shade onto the walls and the floor. When I look at them, it seems that it's night already and the cursed insomnia has begun. I lie down on the bed, then I get up and walk about the room, then lie down again. My nervous excitement generally reaches its highest after dinner, before the evening. For no reason I begin to cry and hide my head in the pillow. All the while I am afraid somebody may come in. I am afraid I shall die suddenly. I am ashamed of my tears. Altogether, something intolerable is happening in my soul. I feel I cannot look at the lamp, or the books, or the shadows on the floor, or listen to the voices in the drawing room any more. Some invisible, mysterious force pushes me rudely out of my house. I jump up, dress hurriedly, and go cautiously out into the street, so that the household shall not notice me. Where shall I go? The answer to this question has long been there in my brain: to Katy. End of Story 2, Part 2.